Mandy loves movies with a passion. For the last decade, she's been a writer and editor in entertainment journalism and really thrived. But the past few years have been rocky as the industry has downsized, and so has Mandy's career. She came to me wondering if she should get creative and stick it out or pivot entirely. With her heart and her bank account at odds, Mandy needed an outside perspective ASAP. Take a listen to what I told her.
So, about a year ago, I lost my job as an entertainment journalist, and I've been struggling to find work since. And I've gone through a lot of different kind of career explorations. Thought e-commerce marketing might be a good fit for me. Was looking into nonprofits, even was looking into sustainability a bit because of my volunteer with work with the Sierra Club. I have gotten some luck recently with job stuff, not necessarily with what I want to do, but I got a freelance gig for a climate change website called The Cool Down. And I also, because of networking, I got a contract position at Dot Meredith, a tech website for, it's an updates editor position that I'll be doing for 3 months. I just started a couple of weeks ago and 20 hours a week. So it's financially, I'm doing better, but I'm still feeling very lost in my career because entertainment journalism was all I ever wanted to do. And it's just not the same as when I first dreamt of doing it as a kid. And I've been having a hard time figuring out what is my next career path. And that's made it really hard for the networking part and posting on LinkedIn part, because it's, if I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm trying to network for, any of that. So I'm just feeling very lost, and I still haven't been able to figure out what it is that I should do next.
What was it or is it about entertainment journalism that made you want to go into that field?
It was actually funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. It started with music because I used to go to a lot of concerts, but then it quickly shifted into TV shows. And that was like the long time thing, because I had a blog that I started in like 2011 called Primetime Addiction. That was my way to write about TV shows. And between that and another website, I was getting to interview the actors that I like. So I just loved TV, and it was always like my comfort place, as well as being able loving writing about it. And that led to being an editor, and I love being an editor. Like, I love working with writers, I love working with analytics and coming up with strategy, so I still love all of that part.
Mhm.
But that's still technically journalism, and journalism isn't exactly in a great state right now. And that's the other, I want sustainability, and I would love to move to the UK, partially because all my extended family is there, and it would be easier for me to travel
Yeah. Yeah.
as well.
Just want to confirm when you say sustainability, or you're talking about climate or you're talking about having a sustainable career path or both?
Since you mentioned that, both.
Uh-huh.
But yes, when I saw sustainability, it's more of because climate change is a passion of mine, which is why I started volunteering for the Sierra Club. But I don't know if I necessarily need to make a career out of it. Maybe my volunteer work checks off
Mhm.
that box. And I guess I'm trying to find out what my passion is for
Mhm.
my career that would give me a sustainable career. So I could travel and save money for retirement and just have a life outside of work, as well as a career that fulfills me as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to be in the camp that preached find a career path or create a career path that you're passionate about. I think it is possible. I think it's hard. I'm now a little bit more in the camp of create a life where you are doing things that you are passionate about, but that does not necessarily mean it is how you make your money.
Mm.
That there could be different sort of bifurcations of the way that you approach things, meaning what you do for your paycheck might not be the thing that fulfills you. And that's okay, as long as you are conserving enough time and energy to be able to still do the things that light you up. And so that when you look at your week, you're able to say, all right, X number of hours were spent paycheck, and then X number of hours were spent passion. And the paycheck allowed you to explore the passion. If you can't marry them together today, I think that's okay. So I'm not giving up though. I want to be clear. Like I'm still going to explore with you how can we bring these together and ideally not have any sort of life bifurcation, but I want us to not put so much pressure on this one path that quote has it all. I think that's going to mean more frustration for ourselves when maybe life is a little bit more like a puzzle and we've just got different pieces that fit in different places. And just like you can have a group of friends and not every friend that you have is the same and serves the same
Yeah.
purpose, right? And you don't share the same things with each friend. So then it becomes more a question of sort of time energy management more than anything else. And that's obviously a whole other discussion. But I do want to put that out there that, and I'm sure you're open to it as well, of looking at different ways in which we can view the place that our paycheck has in our life. Because you are in a tricky position where what you do is extremely valuable. But unfortunately, both within journalism and even in the tech industry and the advertising industry, these are jobs that are often getting cut first
Yeah.
when there's a downsizing. And it's not just entertainment, it's not just sustainability. Like any job or any industry out there, the writers, the marketers were the first ones to go. So you are already in a tough spot where, again, I'm not saying don't try, but just knowing that there could be a limit there, that does not mean you should not still pursue what lights you up, but it's not putting the pressure on it to turn into the paycheck. I know I'm saying things that you already are aware of, but I think everybody listening, this is okay. We're all in this boat together. Curious, Mandy, if you have any thoughts you want to share off of what I've said so far.
I've thought about all of that before, about how the jobs are going away, and I've thought about maybe doing something completely different. But of course, when I've been needing a job, it's always like breaking into something completely new is harder than utilizing the skills and going into your current industry. But I have definitely thought about that, because just because I wanted to be a journalist at 13 years old doesn't mean that now I have to do that or anything related to journalism anymore.
Mhm.
And maybe there is another path, but I think, like you were talking about, putting so much pressure on what the next step is, I think that's probably making it seem even more overwhelming for me.
Correct. Great. Okay, good. So I'm glad that we started there. I do want to dig into your current skills because that's going to be the easiest way for you to get your next opportunity. Putting writing aside for a second, because that's clear, but that does also make me a little nervous because that's the one that people tend to outsource to AI and all of that. But
Mhm.
analytics, like of the things that you've done so far, where is there the highest, I don't want to say the highest ceiling, but like where is there the most growth? And so even in the research that you've done, so you can talk to me about that, like where you're looking for work, do you see based on any of your skills, there's more traction, right? There are more people hiring, there's higher paychecks. Like where is there momentum? If not in the writing part of what you do, maybe in the analytics. Talk to me a little bit about the research you've done.
I definitely saw a lot of growth in sustainability, and I was exploring different areas like fashion sustainability or just different ability companies that have sustainable products, because that's such a growing industry, because more companies are getting sustainability teams as well. So even there's not that many departments that companies that have sustainability communication teams, but there are some, and they're growing. So that was definitely an area that I saw of growth, but it looked like I might need a little bit more technical skills. And the one thing about sustainability, there's so many areas. So it's such a vast area, and trying to find that one little where I can fit all my skill sets in was hard.
Okay. I want to underscore for you and for everybody listening or watching, go where there's growth. Whether you have a job right now and you're looking at your company, where are they investing? Okay. Where are the departments getting budget? Where are they hiring? Okay. Where is their traction? There's going to be a longer path for you if you look there. So whenever you see lots of job postings here or whatever, great. That's a green light. And then we can start strategizing about, all right, what am I missing? What do I have to be able to show them in order to get into that upward stream? Before I talk about that though, because it sounds like it's going to require a little bit of a pivot with you, I want to go back to entertainment for a second. I'm not willing to give that up because when I look at your resume, again, I'm looking at it through the lens of what's going to be the easiest way for Mandy to get hired. Okay. The quickest, easiest sell. And that always means what's the minimal learning curve, right?
Mhm.
Because the recruiter is looking at, does this person need to be trained? If so, how much? Right. So where can Mandy just immediately jump in and start doing her great work? In other words, where do you have the most credibility? Would you say for you is it your industry contacts? Is it your talk to me about how you see your own credibility based off of what you've done so far in your career?
I would say it's my knowledge of the industry because whether I've been doing it for myself or for a paying job, I've just been in it for so long that I know how the industry works and I kind of guess of where it's going, especially right now. Things are still shaking out from the strikes last year. And it just really being able to tell, I had a pretty good guess of who was going to go to San Diego Comic-Con this year just by all all the reading and just covering this for so long. So I'd say that's my knowledge. I used to have more industry contacts, but COVID shook that up a bit. But I've been very good at talking my way into press rooms and onto red carpets and all of that. And that's how I gained my previous connections that I had before they all shifted elsewhere.
And by the way, you still have those connections. You should just get back in touch with them and we can talk about ways to do that in a minute if you're interested. I want to continue this thread because it's going to be helpful for you and everybody listening. Starting with where you're most credible, and you just articulated. So for you, Mandy, it's knowledge of the industry. We'll start there. The second question is who can benefit most from my credibility? This is where we're applying. So right now, off the top of your head, be as creative as possible. Who do you think out there? What companies, what people, what areas, what spaces, products, etc., could benefit from your knowledge of the industry? Where would that be an asset? To whom would that be an asset? Just throw some names out there.
I can't.
Do you agree that it would be an asset? How about
I
that? We'll even begin there.
Yeah, my friends are always talking to me about asking me about the different streaming services and like where they're going and asking me about what shows they should check out. So maybe it's the audiences of different websites of fans and people who actually want to know about the business. I haven't really done any like hardcore reporting on the business, but I've just been very in tuned to what's going on I will say in TV shows, not as much as in movies, but I do know a little bit about the movie landscape as well.
Mm-hmm. So let's just say, for creative sake, let's just make a list of literally anybody and anything that could possibly benefit from knowledge of the industry. So writing out all of the streaming services, okay, Netflix, Tubi, etc. Like literally, do you get Variety? Are you subscribing to any of these publications?
I used to for the Hollywood Reporter, but I still read their newsletter. They have a very in-depth newsletter that comes out every day.
Mhm.
And until recently, I was also listening to their weekly podcast, which just ended, unfortunately. But that's since I lost my job last year. Before that, I was reading a lot of the variety stuff and Entertainment Weekly stuff as well. So I was reading a lot more. But the Hollywood Reporter has just such a great in-depth newsletter that's been easy for me to keep up with everything.
Great. And this is also for everybody listening here. Pay attention to anything that you're consuming, okay? Especially if it's not for work. I know that was partially for your last job, but something that you're just doing in your own free time, okay? Like time is money. So and also these publications do cost money. So if you are spending your time and money absorbing this stuff, you should use it. Okay? Go get your money's worth. And what I mean by that is pour through all of these publications and make a massive spreadsheet of every single person that you think is interesting that could possibly benefit from your knowledge. We're not at the point yet in our conversation here today where we're going to talk about how do you appeal to them and working through self-doubt and things like that. But we need you to get some leads. We need you to actually, this is in response to how you started today, is you're not sure quite even what to post on LinkedIn because you don't know what you're working backwards from here. Like, what is the target? The target to me, I would like to see you stay in entertainment. A, because you said that's been your passion all along. And B, you have the most credibility in there. It would be the easiest to get hired. Now, of course, are they hiring? I don't know. We're not there yet. But let's not give up on entertainment when you can very easily go through these publications and amass a massive spreadsheet of contacts, potential contacts. Things are changing. Companies are merging, right? Like Paramount and can't remember who else. It's like there's a lot of movement happening, which can be possibly to your benefit because they have to staff up quickly. It might also mean that they've stalled hiring or whatever. So we don't know yet, but there's movement. Okay. There's movement. So you're going to write down all of those contacts. And when you really look at each of these places and people that you might be able to work for, I want you to think about what's a problem that I'd like to solve for them? Okay. What are the things I want to help them with in order for them to grow? This is the pitch you're going to make for them. Again, whether they have an open job or it's a consulting gig that you position yourself for. So I think we need to take a look at your website, make sure that you're really presenting yourself as the expert that I know you are. I don't know if you feel you are. We can talk about that in a second, but you have put in many, many years and a lot of hours doing this stuff. And I don't want you to just throw it away. I want you to present yourself. I you just deserve so much better than what you're getting. And it's really bothering. It's because I know you and it just bothers me that you could have spent all of this time going so in depth and becoming an expert of knowledge in this area and to not A, use it on your behalf, but B, there's somebody out there who could really leverage that. You could really help somebody with your knowledge. So who could really benefit from your knowledge? And I know I posed the question a little bit more generally, but let's think about it specifically in terms of problems that you would solve using your knowledge. Okay, so you as the industry expert, how is that helpful to somebody in a problem that they might need to solve? And let me know if that question makes sense.
Maybe it's just using also my content strategy skills to try to come up with new strategies as the TV show industry keeps evolving.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I want you to talk to me about what are the problems that you're seeing in the industry. Okay. You've been reading about it, that things are changing. Because the only way you're going to get hired anywhere is by you convincing them that you can solve their problems. You are the person to fill their needs. Okay. It's not, otherwise, you're a nice to have hire, and those are the ones that get let go. So we have to be able to specifically talk to where are your challenges as a business? And then how does you, as an expert in your area, help solve those challenges? So yeah, if it's easier for you to wrap your head around what are the challenges the industry is having, and then matching that up with what you know and what you've experienced, telling that story succinctly in a beautiful website, cover letter, etc. So let's start there. Yeah, what are the problems in the industry?
The industry is now contracting. And in some ways, you can look at that as a good thing because there's been too much TV. But now there aren't as many opportunities for the up and comer actors and writers. So it's harder for new voices to break through. And this is also a big thing with the CW changing hands into Nexstar, because that was like an incubator for talent. And they even had the actors would go through this training to be directors, and then they got to learn how to direct. And now that's all gone away. And it concerns me about the future because we want those new voices. And how are we going to find a place for those new voices in the industry when there aren't the places for them? And not many of the networks or the streaming services are creating the young adult content where these new voices are going into.
So for this problem that you mentioned, one that you're passionate about, who out there is trying to solve this problem that you know of or doing anything to support it?
I've heard journalists talk about it, but I haven't seen anyone trying to solve the problem.
And can you imagine some solutions to that problem?
I feel like it's got to be another similar network to the CW that they want to be able to foster these kind of voices. I think part of the issue with the looking at the younger audience is they're not consuming TV
Mhm.
like we were when we were younger, who we were watching the CW and the
Yeah,
WB.
yeah, yeah.
So it's trying to get them where they are, which they're on TikTok and they're on YouTube, and that's a much harder audience to grab onto.
Now I'm thinking about you working for TikTok or a platform, right? Where again, you come with industry knowledge. I know some of these platforms are trying to increase, like their TikTok, I think, is starting to want to compete with YouTube even, and they're experimenting with longer form content, which is ironic because TikTok's whole thing was short form. But the reason I'm walking you through this line of thinking is I think for you especially, time to be extremely creative about the problems you solve, who you're solving them for, really thinking outside the box. Ultimately, you're going to tell a compelling story. And you're going to be good at it because you're a good writer. So I know we can get there. It's just a matter of thinking of a lot of different ways in which we could apply your skills. So
Mhm.
if it's not in the traditional sense, because those people are downsizing, then if we think a little bit more creatively, can we find new areas of growth previously undiscovered, right? So as I explain that to you, does anything come to mind? Again, this is like really outside the box thinking.
The other thing that I've thought about that I would love to think about more is melding my knowledge, not of the TV industry, but of like my work with websites of like analytics with what I've been reading and learning about AI.
Okay.
Because it's Google search is changing. Like the websites aren't going to be coming up on the same way because of how AI is working, and no one has figured out how to solve this problem yet. People talk about it and around it, and I don't know how many people are really delving in to really come up with creative ways. It hasn't affected too much yet, but it's supposed to affect websites traffic
Mm-hmm.
as AI starts to take over more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a feeling for you, there is going to be an area in which you need to invest in some learning. Because again, you have this body of knowledge of the industry and credibility you've built over years. You have things with analytics, great, but knowing where the industry is going, how you've just expressed it here with AI, et cetera. Is there a certification that you need to get? Is there any gap that you feel like you currently have that if somebody were to look at your resume, they would say, "Ooh, she's like almost there, but not quite." And where is that not quite? And how can we fill that gap?
Listen to the Marketing AI podcast, and they have a lot of different courses that you can take as well.
Mhm.
But one of the things that, because they were doing a Q&A episode that I asked about like how I can showcase my knowledge of AI when I'm not
Mhm.
working.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they were saying was to volunteer for a nonprofit coming up with an AI strategy for them. So I could really utilize my AI knowledge. The one nice thing about AI is it's still fairly new.
Yeah.
So I've experimented with a bunch of the different platforms, and I definitely want to do more experimentation. And I don't think I need to get too technical when it's coming to the AI strategy, but it depends on what kind of, because I don't want to create a new AI platform like some people are doing for companies, but like coming up with an AI strategy that's on the line with what I've done with the content strategies.
Quick question for you. I think there are jobs out there, or if not, there should be. And tell me if this is in line with what you're talking about. So with ChatGPT, which is of course AI, it is such an art and a science to be able to correctly prompt chat. It's only as
Yes.
good as the inputs you give it, which I think, are there jobs out there where people literally for companies are like managing their chat GPT? Or talk to me about all the different avenues in which you can see AI helping. I don't know, pick one or two companies that you think are doing awesome work.
I'm not even, it's hard to know what companies are doing with their AI strategies. So I don't
No, but
really
like
know.
with
But
that, you don't even have to know what
oh,
they're doing, just even for yourself. If you, how could you envision taking a certain company and elevating their AI game? What would it look like? How would it help them?
I think like some of these entertainment websites really want to have a lot of ideas, and that's very hard to come up with a lot of the many ideas that they want. So using AI is a good, you wouldn't necessarily take the exact ideas that AI is giving you, but it's very good at coming up with something that you're like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me tweak that headline and make it better. So just coming up with more ideas for story ideas when they're really wanting to ramp up their content is a great way to do it. And then just using it, you can also use it for social media when you're trying to come up with an a, a post about that article. It makes it so much quicker to have the AI tool do it for you instead of um, writing it yourself. Like you should write the actual article yourself. I'm still a very firm believer in that. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like shorter content, I think that's a great way to use the AI to cut down on your time because it can be time consuming coming up with the social media post, especially if you're not the one who wrote the article.
Because I'm curious if you could almost rebrand yourself as an expert in, and I think we need to be a little bit more clear with AI. Like AIs can be a bit like it's general. So it's really more about how does AI get it manifested and in which specific use cases it can actually help a business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could imagine yourself a little bit more like a consultant right now, where you're able to market your niche skills to people who can benefit. And if we can get just one client, maybe they're not paying you very much, but just to get it in your portfolio and you have results, you're able to say on the website, this was where the business was at before they hired me. When they hired me, here's what we did together. And then here were the results, quantitative and qualitative. And you can build a kind of new book of business. So something that isn't just you where you're at now, waiting for the next job, where you are getting some movement while also building skills in a direction that has more momentum than the direction you've been in so far, right? Where are people
Yeah.
hiring instead of firing?
Yeah.
Only one thing though on this AI track, there are websites, there are services, or plugins, software, etc., like that, where if you do give them content, a body of content, they'll spit out article ideas and things like that. So you are going to want to do research around if they don't hire me, who are they hiring? And it might not be a person, it might be software. Just like what are you competing with here in the space? And that doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means here's why working with an actual person is going to be better for you. And
Yeah.
usually that better is defined as money saved or time saved. Because that's the thing, like where you're currently at, your resume is, it's writing, it just feels too much in the past of an area that's too battered by
Mhm.
downsizing. And so if we can really just get you to present yourself as the future, right? But not forgetting your past. That's the thing I want to be clear about. I don't want you to let go of the love that you've had for the work you've done and the body of work that you've created along the way and the credibility that you've created along the way. How do we marry the two? If you could do some more thinking about how AI could benefit companies that you would be good at that also combines industry knowledge. So, still looking at your target companies in entertainment again, but I just don't want you to let go of that. And then when you've reached out to all of them and they all say no and it doesn't work, fine. And then I would urge you to have a portion of your week dedicated to still writing so that you still have like your soul. Okay. But I just can't let go of the fact that you've built credibility and that you wouldn't leverage it. But it's got to be combined with future skills that people are hiring for and rewarding. So this all goes back to what are the problems that you could solve with skills that you have? And also maybe increasing some of those skills too. Have you written any of this stuff down, by the way? I'm not talking about notes from our call today, but just in terms of new directions to go in and how to present yourself, how much of this is in your head versus a Google Doc?
It's probably about 50-50
Mm-hmm.
because I've definitely written down when I was trying to explore different avenues of what I was interested in, what I'm good at, and past experiences. And I've done that, but it's all like some of it was especially for the sustainability stuff on paper, but other stuff has been not on paper because then I was just like, I have no idea what direction I should go anymore because I don't know where my passion is outside of payment. So, and as we've talked about, there's not as many jobs in entertainment as there was for in both the TV show industry and the entertainment journalism side. So that's one of the reasons why I was trying to pivot out of it. But as you're saying, that was always what was stopping me from going elsewhere, was because it's what can I pivot into that utilizes my skills and my knowledge. And that was always something that was stopping me, because I've always wanted to get into fashion at some point, but my knowledge of fashion is definitely not as good as my knowledge as entertainment. And also, once again, a very competitive.
I know, which is also why I started this whole thing of maybe you'll ultimately decide this is just like a thing you do on the weekends, and that's totally fine. But let's talk quickly though let's talk about organizing this process, okay? Because it is overwhelming. So I would start always with who are the various players out there that would potentially be an interesting place to work for. Okay. So when you're going through these publications that you subscribe to, writing down people, writing down companies and organizations, doing a little bit of research, putting that in a spreadsheet. Okay. So a list of companies, and then something about them. And then imagining what might be the problem that you would solve for that company, which maybe you can figure out by looking through their website, but maybe you don't need to, right? It's more like you have a knowledge of the industry. You're able to see this company struggling in this way. What's a challenge that you could imagine them having that you might want to solve? And then make that a note, put that right there. Okay. And then as you're going through all of these companies and problems you can imagine yourself solving for them, is there a theme? Is there a pattern? There probably is. And then reflect on your own materials as they currently exist, right? Your LinkedIn, if you have a personal website. Okay. Is is the story that you're telling about yourself reflective of the challenges that you would like to solve for these people? We've got to get those to be aligned. I think that's your first order of business before we move on and think of totally different industries. We've done a couple of those exercises already, but I would love to see it down on paper. We're like, okay, I just read about this new production company, has this great mission to elevate new talent. I can imagine that something they might struggle with is when you're a creative person. So you'll be able to think of what that is. You'll probably think of a challenge that you would want to solve anyway, but maybe the challenge you come up with is not something you want to solve. No worries, move on. But again, it's all about, is this an interesting company or an interesting person? Is this a challenge that I have some credibility to solve? That is all. Those are the only two things you need to know in order to make a compelling pitch to apply. If you are going through all of these companies and all of these people, and you are like, there is nobody here that is doing anything interesting, then you know it is time to move on. If you are going through all these people and all these companies, and you can't imagine any challenges that you'd like to solve for them, that means you're tapped out. You don't want to work in this industry anymore. You're bored of these problems. You're bored.
Yeah.
Okay. Go through this exercise first. Then you know, okay, time to either move on or time to improve the way I'm presenting myself and how I'm networking and how I'm reaching out. Then it's a whole other call we're having. Okay.
Yeah.
So does that sound good as your next step?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay. And then you can run a couple of experiments here, right? If you see a pattern of, you know what, I really want to solve this certain challenge for this certain kind of company, dedicate your next month of LinkedIn posts to that, to orienting towards that. The other thing to do, by the way, before you go like gung ho on, yeah, like I want to solve this problem for these kinds of companies, is do some research to make sure that there's growth happening. Okay. That these are not companies who've talked about recent layoffs. Although, listen, maybe they're companies that are suffering, right? Because I'm prompting you to find a challenge, right? So, perhaps there are some issues here. That's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you have a really compelling offer to them. But go through and just make sure, hey, is there a growth path here in the problem I want to solve for them? For example, if that problem you want to solve for them is, here's how ChatGPT can help them solve X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be that person who manages your chat GPT as a freelancer or whatever. And you have a bunch of
Mhm.
clients where you are like the input queen. And then you're going to make all of your LinkedIn content about how to communicate with ChatGPT to get better results. That's just an example. You totally don't have to be into that idea, but hopefully that's showing you where I'm going with this
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I want you to, again, not let go of all this other stuff you've done. It's just combining it and pitching it in a new way. Then, so that's making sure if and when you are ready to fully move on from this industry, you're like, I have done everything that I could have done. You will have no regrets about it. If
Yeah.
you decide, okay, I am going to start to look elsewhere, tell me if you've done this already. Have you joined communities like Women in AI, or what does your networking look like as you are starting to move into other spaces?
I've been part of New York Women in Communications for 10 years now, so that's my main network. But if I want to go outside of communications, I obviously need to find other networks
Yep.
because that's very communications orientated.
Yes. I think you should, again, going in this direction of where there's growth. When you've talked about analytics, you've talked about AI, these are some buzzwords to me. That's where people are hiring. Every company these days is a tech company. So every company needs analytics. Like, just what avenue in which you are starting to be interested in has the most growth. If we're not looking to marry passion and paycheck anymore, and it's just about paycheck, you need to absolutely be going where the paycheck is the biggest.
Mhm.
So the question to you is, how are you going to figure that stuff out? Do you have ideas already you want to share with me? How do you know where to go where there's growth? Where will you start researching?
It's just researching when I've done it, like how I found it with the sustainability stuff was just digging into different companies
Mhm.
and seeing, and then finding out they just created new roles and just reading lots of different articles about it. And that's how I found that was a very big growth kind
Mhm.
of area, even though it's a very vast
Mhm.
area. And I would still have to figure out what my niche would be in that. But it
Mhm.
was just doing the research and seeing and how many positions were available and how many positions were new roles, which was very, I thought that was very telling because they created new roles and it wasn't just like someone had left and they
Right.
were hiring someone to replace them.
Okay. Okay, great. So you're already on the path. Would the question be, how do you compete? What do you feel is holding you back from getting hired?
With the sustainability stuff, it was really just knowledge
Okay.
because it would be because the first step would be choosing a niche because they want you to be very knowledgeable in that sort because there's lots of different areas because there's like agriculture and then there's fashion and there's a little bit in entertainment as well, but that you needed to have been worked on sets before, not just writing about the industry. It's one choosing a niche and then getting knowledgeable about that, but I feel like that takes time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get knowledgeable.
I know, which is why I didn't want you to let go of all the knowledge that you already have.
Mm.
Listen, there's still lots of people who have jobs in the entertainment industry. Isn't it everything entertainment? Everything's content these days.
Yeah.
So now I'm starting to feel like a little bummed for a second because I'm like, oh man, is Mandy really, is anyone going to be hiring her? I'm like, wait a minute. Are we thinking too small about what content is and what entertainment is? I'm not saying to go work for an influencer, but like maybe let's think really outside the
Mhm.
box about content and entertainment here. So you're going to start with the industry players,
Mhm.
but you mentioned new talent and helping up and coming people and thinking outside the box where it's not just a full-time job, but maybe you got a bunch of clients. And I'm really thinking outside the box here of maybe you got 10 up and coming actors that you're doing content for. I don't know. Let's just really make a massive spreadsheet where, yeah, you got your traditional players, but who is doing anything and everything in the content entertainment game that could benefit from what you know and do? Really let
Yeah.
yourself go wild because you're starting with this one tree branch that you've built and it's a strong trunk, okay, where you got this huge body of knowledge there, but that industry is up in arms, is confused, it's
Yeah.
refiguring itself out, which is terrible for getting a job, but there's opportunity in that. And I know you see both sides. I know you see the
Yeah.
positive and negative. So let's maybe exploit, I don't know if that's the right word, but let's exploit the fact that there's a disintegration of the industry, meaning content is appearing in many different forms and many different people. There are so many more potential opportunities that you could support than perhaps before. It's not like it's just for major studios and that was it and you're out of luck. So, also in the confusion, potential confusion of this sort of industry disintegration, the upside is a lot of people need help. Now,
Yeah.
they may not have huge budgets, which is why I wanted you to think of yourself as a consultant or a freelancer, which again, you're already in that mindset. So you're primed, I think, to be able to offer your services. But again, targets. So we've thought of targets in a more traditional sense. When we expand our mindsets, when we look at this spreadsheet, when we're going through Entertainment Weekly, how else can we think of entertainment and content? Do you have thoughts off the bat?
Yeah, YouTube keeps being the most streamed website, network, however you want to call it, even though it's not a traditional Max or Peacock or ABC or any. It's that seems to be where people are watching the most content, even though it's not traditional
Mm-hmm.
content. And that has vast types of content on it. So I think that you're right about how while the industry has been shook up, it's not necessarily traditional TV shows and content in that kind of way as it used to be. It's very different. And I do feel like TikTok is more of a entertainment platform these days than a social media platform.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also the people on it too, right? Like people are hiring as well. Just think of yourself as you're creating a war room here, okay? Like we are fucking going to war here and we will make this work because you have a freaking body of knowledge and expertise and we are not flushing it down the toilet and it's going to be useful to somebody. We just have to think incredibly creatively. So make a list. I'm going to repeat some of the things I've said before, but now that you're thinking beyond just variety entertainment weekly, like content, entertainment as broadly speaking as possible. Make a list of anybody and everybody in that space and then do research off of them, meaning whoever you write down, whatever you write down, go try to find one or two people or companies that are similar. So if you make a list of 10, I want you to double it. So if you're writing down a certain person, a kind of content creator or whatever, then just Google or look at the hashtags that they put up and then find somebody who's similar, right? So just like double your options, whatever you come up with. These are your potential targets for who you can help. Then really write down all the things that you have credibility on and are good at and start super, super broad and then get very specific. So knowledge of industry, great. What does that actually mean? Okay. Go into like serious detail because this is going to help you then tell them why you should be hired. So making that list. And when you say analytics, I need you to be way more specific. AI, way more specific. Okay. Third category. How does what you are great at help those target lists? Or how does what you are great serve that target list, benefit them? Which ones do you feel you are the easiest to say yes to? Because the skills are not so transferable, right? So when you have these two columns of your target list and then the list of things that you're great at and have credibility at, and when you imagine that list benefiting from your skills, circle everyone who benefits, but then star the ones where you feel like the sell is going to be the easiest. And the sell being the easiest means the most minimal learning curve if you were to be hired. And also that they have the biggest need.
Okay.
Does that sound like a good, because we're almost at time. I know there's so much more we can talk about, but just as a good next step for getting organized with not giving up on staying in the entertainment world, in the content world, it's just broadening how we view content and then seeing how you present yourself. So if they're not hiring, let's say, copywriters or editors, fine, you have other skills. And then we really need to shore up your LinkedIn and your resume or your website to reflect that. But again, back to your point of who am I even speaking to here?
Yeah.
yeah, it's starting with the targets. And
Yes.
by the way, you can absolutely see if anybody has posted jobs just to make sure you're going in a direction where there's growth, but don't let that stop you. Okay. Cause I think if your pitch is compelling enough, these people will open your email and they'll give you a shot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we didn't have more time to get more in depth because I know you're working really hard on all this and I just want to see you succeed. I hope this was helpful. Tell me based off of what I've shared. Again, I know it's a lot of things you've already thought of, but I'm hoping I ordered it in a way that feels a little bit more achievable and or less overwhelming. But yeah, what are your thoughts of what you're going to take from today?
I feel like I have an actual next step that I can
Mhm.
do as opposed to just sitting here going, I have no idea what to do, so doing nothing.
Yes.
And I like the idea of trying to stay in entertainment because I do feel like even though it's not a great industry at the moment with the layoffs and everything, I do feel like it would be easier for me to get something as opposed to trying to do something completely new at
Mhm.
this point. Like I feel like it would be much easier for me to get into entertainment again. And then I could, if I really wanted to move on to something else, do it while, because then that gives me time to figure it out.
Yeah, I do. And as you continue to do research into areas of growth and skill sets that are in demand, getting specific in that AI analytics, do see if you need to be increasing your skills there. Because if that's going to be ultimately the way in which you're able to pivot out, because if people aren't hiring writers, but they would be interested in hiring somebody who can manage ChatGPT, wherever there's growth, if you don't feel like you have enough skills in that area to make you a compelling hire, do work on those.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you a way to stay in the industry for the time being, but knowing the writings on the wall potentially. And also, if you're going to go pitch yourself hard to YouTube, right? Being able to be that Swiss Army knife of a writer, you got your left and your right brain, right? So do make sure that where you've observed growth and skills that are in demand, do you feel you have those? And if you could be better, what is that roadmap? What are the steps you need to take to get that? So this is a bit of a simultaneous task. I think that's the homework. Will you let me know how it goes?
Yes, I will.
Okay, Mandy, you're the best. Thank you so much for doing this.